Hello and welcome to episode 1 of the Gaily Digest. I'm Nigel.
And I'm Joshua.
Welcome, Joshua. How are you today?
I'm cold, but otherwise I am great.
Fantastic. Welcome to our podcast. This is going to be a show that we're going to be trying to bring you every month, and it's going to be a show that's going to be about the LGBTQ plus lifestyle. And we're going to be talking about LGBTQ plus matters that affect us all and things that are going to be positive, and there are going to be, unfortunately, some negative things. But we're going to be doing that in a way to try and highlight the issues that we face and the troubles that we face sometimes that we need to stand up against. We're also going to be talking about various interests throughout the shows, which are going to be interests of ours and also interests of yours that we hope will resonate with you. Things like gaming, movies, TV shows, and books, etc. We're also going to be covering any current affairs news, anything that's affecting our community or anything in general that's going on in the world. And we're also going to be covering reviews of games, movies, books, and even places we've been to, places we've visited. And we're also going to be looking to have some guests coming up on the shows in the future. And in addition to the pre-recorded show, we'll also be looking at having Twitter Spaces, which we'll be doing monthly. And this will be an opportunity for everyone to get involved in the conversation. It will be live and it will be unfiltered, and it will be called the Gaily Digest Unfiltered. So without further ado, let's get on with the show.
So, what are we talking about this week?
Well, I think the obvious news, the big news of the week, is the election of Donald Trump.
Ugh, do we have to?
Well, we don't have to, but I think it's a bit of a talking point this week, isn't it?
I suppose I can just be horrible about him for a few minutes.
Just a few minutes.
On here, anyway.
Oh, so he's been elected again, 47th President of the United States. What does this mean for us? What does this mean for people that are LGBTQ plus that are living in America, or even those that are visiting America?
Well, I think it's going to be devastating, in my opinion, because he's spent his entire campaign recently, he's spent it attacking specifically trans people, making up lies about that you're sending your children to school, and then the second you pick them up, they're a totally new gender, which we know is a lie, but his followers seem to believe him, and that seems to be the main issue in their life right now, rather than anything else that's affecting their life. It seems to be these trans people that they've probably never met, never spoken to, and don't know anybody who's trans.
And this is the thing, isn't it? A lot of that boils down to ignorance. It's ignorance of people that don't know trans people, don't talk to trans people, and they listen to the lies that get spread around, and and the misinformation that goes around.
Well, their only experience of trans people is what they read and what they see in the media, specifically on the far-right channels and Facebook. That seems to be all misinformation, and that's their only experience with trans people. They don't actually speak to trans people, and they don't even want to understand trans people. They've made their mind up. They believe complete lies with no evidence, and that's just how it is with them. Unfortunately, you can't talk them around.
And it's almost reminiscent of what happened to the gay community, isn't it? Really, only a few decades ago.
Yeah, in our lifetime.
Definitely within our lifetime. I mean, look at Section 28 over here in the UK. Legislation that prevented the teaching of same-sex relationships and homosexuality. You know, textbooks were banned. Any kind of literature was banned. You weren't allowed to teach it. And had there been the right kind of education, a lot of lives could have been saved through, particularly through the AIDS epidemic, if there had been the right kind of education, the right kind of support out there. But there just wasn't. And I think we're going down a very dark path, both in the US and in the UK, of where we're in danger of history repeating itself. But this time it's the trans community that are being made the victim of effectively hate.
Yeah, I think it's definitely nowadays it's with social media and we can get news and information at the click of a button. It's so much easier to spread misinformation. So although when I was growing up, in my experience, there was no mention of being gay or trans or anything other than straight at school, and that was it. And we had a little bit of internet, but it wasn't really a big thing. We didn't have Facebook, things like that. But nowadays, with trans people, it is 24/7, every day of the year, constant attacks on them, this constant misinformation, this fear mongering that is just spread like wildfire. And it seems to be ingrained in every single politician as some sort of vote winner. And it's less than 1% of the population in the UK and the US. It's such a small number of people, and the way they are acting is if there's this mass of people coming to harm everybody when it's really not happening.
Yeah, it's horrible to see as well, because people are being victimized, people are being um, harassed, they're being abused, both online and in the street. And you know, we've seen um, news articles of people that have been attacked for their sexuality or for their gender identity. And you know, in the most extreme of cases, there have been people that have been murdered, which is absolutely horrific. And all because there is this irrational fear or hatred of a certain demographic of a community, and it's absolutely wrong.
It's definitely been weaponized, and like with a lot of politicians and the right wing people, they've weaponized the word woke. For some reason, if you agree with everybody being equal, not being racist, letting people be who they are, you're woke. And apparently, that is the worst thing that you can be in the world, according to them. When it's actually a compliment, I actually quite like when they call me that, because it means I'm doing something right. I'm saying the right things. If that's what they're reading I'm saying, and they call me woke, I've clearly said the right things. And it has been weaponized to the point where it's a pointless word anymore because they don't understand what it means, and they just throw it out there to try and win an argument
And
rather than points.
it's somewhat ironic, isn't it, as well, that they do that. They use that word thinking they're being clever, when actually they're just highlighting their own stupidity, because they think they're being clever and they think they're throwing an insult out, because they think that woke means to mean something I don't like, basically, when that's not what it means. The word woke means being alert to social injustice, in particular racism, but you can apply that to the same other to the other protected characteristics under the Equality Act, whereby you can be standing up against ableism, homophobia, transphobia, misogyny, sexism, you know, gender identity, and you know, where people are being abusive and thinking they're being clever, they call you woke and they think that's the argument winner. It's not. If anything, they, like you say, it's just them highlighting that you are doing something right. So, listeners, if people do get onto you, if people do start calling you woke, trying to insult you, just take it as a compliment. It's not anything bad. It's not anything that means anything bad. You know, I mean, you've even got politicians out there that are using woke as a means to try and belittle the good people that are out there. I mean, you look at, was it Richard Tice recently?
Yes, he's angry at a law firm this week. I don't know what he'll be angry at next week, but this week it's a law firm simply because they use pronouns, which everybody does. We have since, I think, the 14th century. I think there's history going back to using pronouns. And
Does he use pronouns himself?
I have a few pronouns I'd like to call him, but in his specific tweet attacking, I never do. His tweet attacking this law firm, he specifically uses the pronouns I and we for himself, not realizing that he's using pronouns, whilst also saying pronouns are nonsense and we shouldn't use pronouns. This is someone who's elected into our government who is angry at pronouns but also uses them.
Imagine getting angry at pronouns when all you're doing is being respectful to another person. I mean, imagine if people were disrespectful to him for something that he wanted people to address him as, like a particular title or something like that. It's just ridiculous getting so wound up and so upset. But it just feeds into the faux outrage that's out there. The faux outrage about things like pronouns and gender identity. People are just being ridiculous. And I think some of them are just trying to be offensive just for the sake of being offensive. I don't think... I think there's some out there that couldn't care less, but because they want to be offensive and they want to trigger people, they'll say all the right trigger words to rile people up and get people angry.
Yeah, I think the problem is hatred and controversy makes money. That's why they're doing it. If they didn't make money, if they weren't on TV because of these subjects, if they weren't given articles to write because of these subjects, and if they didn't make ad revenue on Twitter or X, now it's called, but it's still Twitter to me.
Still Twitter to me as well.
Yeah. But if they didn't make money from doing this, they wouldn't do it because it's pointless. You don't get any, there's no reason to be doing it other than to get money. And we know they're doing it to get money because they're on TV and news articles and all these other things far more than anybody else actually has power. Like the current government, who have a very large majority, you very rarely see them on the news channels and stuff, but we always see the Reform MPs, and there's 5 of them out of the entire government, and they are constantly everywhere on the news, but obviously not Farage at the moment because he's visiting his friend in America.
Yeah, Donald Trump, the man that has won the presidential election. I mean, why him? Why? He's not the most appealing. I mean, you look back at his rallies that he did, and a lot of the nonsense that he was spouting in his rallies, none of it made any sense. He'd start talking sense, but then he'd start rambling about things that just didn't.
He's definitely delusional, and because in his world, he is this god. He is perfect. He's the best at everything. No matter what it is, he will be the best. He says that all the time when there's evidence showing that he's actually the worst. And I think the scariest thing for most people in America is more people voted for somebody who is a felon, he is a rapist, he is racist, he hates all minorities, he calls them animals, which is very reminiscent of Hitler's words. And people voted for that. And at his rallies, when he starts saying things like this, the glee on their faces behind him, the joy and the excitement they get when he starts talking about minorities like this, that's what the true scary thing is, because these are going to be people's neighbours, people's families, people's teachers or doctors, and they're going to know that they see them as lesser than, and they voted for somebody who has assaulted women, talks about women like they are property. And if you voted for him, you must share his views, because there is no other reason why you would vote for somebody who is so disgusting.
And I think it's also a massive hit, I think, for women's rights as well, isn't it? And I certainly think there's quite worryingly, I think there's going to be a lot more misogyny in the US. I mean, there's already been, I've seen tweets saying things like, talking about women going on doing sex bans, and then men are saying, like, you have a choice. Well, yes, they have a choice. They have the right to say no. They have the absolute right to say no. You know, they should have or should be allowed complete autonomy over their own bodies. That's their right. Nobody should be able to take that away from them. If you take that away and you say things like you have a choice, you're you are endorsing a rape culture. And that's wrong on every single level. Because if you're going to talk like that, then you shouldn't go near a woman. You shouldn't be allowed near women. I'm sorry. In fact, no, I'm not sorry. You should, if you're that kind of person that wants to behave like that and treat women like objects, then you should not be allowed anywhere near women at all, because that's very disturbing, and it's quite a horrific attitude to take.
And the fact that now he's in, he can just wipe away all these charges, which to me is astounding, that you can just wipe away. Well, it's astounding to start with that a felon can even run for a presidency, let alone win it. It's quite shocking. And I believe in many of the states, he would actually not be allowed to vote because he's a felon. A lot of jobs, such as McDonald's, where he did his little PR stunt, he wouldn't actually be able to get a job at McDonald's because he's a felon. So he can't work at McDonald's, but he can be the president. That's what the most scariest thing is, I think.
And yeah, I mean, it's quite a pity that he didn't live he wasn't voting in a state where it was illegal for him to vote because he's a felon. That would have been somewhat ironic, I think. But yeah, it's I just think it's astounding, like you say, that they've elected in a felon, a criminal, as the president of the United States, and that's, what kind of example does that set for the world? What kind of example does it set for their country?
Yeah, I think the problem is he's backed by like religious extremists, like evangelicals that are to the extreme in religion. They want women to do what their husband says, just have children and stay at home and look after the children, and that is their role in the world. And the fact that they will take away a woman's right to choose what she does with her body, even down to IVF, which is making children, which they're supposed to be for, they don't want that now. But again, if you don't want to do something, don't do it. But to push that onto other people and stop them from having these decisions in life, it's not only cruel, it is selfish. And I do not believe that this religion that you say you follow, that's meant to be about love and caring and looking after others, you're doing everything that's opposite to what you say you follow.
Yeah, and I certainly think there's a lot of worry ahead in America. I think there's a lot of concern around what the future holds for the American people. You know, there are a lot of very decent, very hardworking, good people in America that didn't vote for a criminal, and I think that, you know, they understandably have a lot of concerns, a lot of worry ahead, going forward. But let's move on from Trump.
Please do.
I know he's not your favourite person.
Been bombarded with him for the last 8 years.
Oh dear. But something else that's come up recently is the and it's quite fitting that it's this week because it's Remembrance Sunday this weekend, and it is Remembrance Day on Monday, the 11th. So we've got 2 days of remembrance coming up. But something that's come up recently is the Royal British Legion have been bombarded. I think bombarded is the right term to use here, because they have been bombarded on a lot of their posts of people expressing anger. And they've been expressing anger at a poppy pin that has been released for the first time, I think, because all previous times when this has come up, it's been a fake one, a homemade one that was put on, I think, eBay or Etsy or something like that. But now the Royal British Legion have officially released their first Pride poppy pin, which is the poppy with the progressive Pride flag attached to it. And people have been up in arms because they think that it's woke. Going back to our argument or our discussion about wokeness, they think it's an insult to veterans. They think it's a disgrace. They think they're politicising the poppy appeal and the charity for our veterans that fought during the war. And yet when you try to have a discussion with these people, they can't seem to grasp that there were people that fought during the war that were gay. And there were people that were in the army that were kicked out for being gay because there was a ban on gay people serving in the army. Quite bizarrely, I don't really understand why gay people were banned from serving in the army. And then you look at people like Alan Turing, who, as we know, was quite instrumental in cracking wasn't it the Enigma code, which led to helping us be successful in winning the war, or contributed to our success in winning the war. Obviously at great expense, because there were sadly so many lives lost throughout the war on both sides. Now, Alan Turing, as we know, was gay. And for those that don't know, Alan Turing paid the price for that, because what happened, after the war, he got into a relationship with a man. The man he took into his place to live there, and that man burgled him. He reported the matter to the police, but had to disclose their relationship to the police. As a result, he then got prosecuted for indecent acts, and as a result was chemically castrated. That was to some extent, you can argue he's a war hero. And look at how that war hero was treated. Now, if a war hero these days was treated like that, there would be outcry. There would be absolute uproar. But people don't know that. I think there's a lot of people out there that weren't even alive when the war happened, that like to go down the route of supporting our veterans, and rightly so, because they are brave men and women that fought, that were involved in the war. But then anytime the Pride poppy comes up, there's outcry. And they just seem to forget. You try to educate them and they just seem to forget that we had people from our community that fought during the war, and this is there to remember those people that are involved.
And we still have people in the armed forces now that are part of this community. These are the very same people that they're currently saying that we should give them all the help they need, we should care for them when they come home, and all these things, but they're also attacking them and making out that they're lesser than. Now, when I looked on the Poppy Appeals website, there's over 40 new pins added alongside this one Pride pin. There's over 40 football poppy pins. Now, I'm pretty sure football parties like Arsenal and Manchester United, I'm pretty sure they weren't involved in the war. And I've seen them loving those all over Facebook. They're all buying those and wearing those with pride, but not the actual Pride poppy. And I just find that so hypocritical.
It's hypocrisy, isn't it?
And they just do not see it. And the problem is they've taken the poppy and they've turned it into this like a fetish thing where they just fetishize the war, and it's the only way that they want to see it is that they just want to keep bringing it up and then pushing out all the people that actually did help, that are like minorities, different religions, different races, different genders. They just want to dismiss all of you unless you are a white soldier. Unless you're white and a soldier, that's all that they see. That's all they care about.
Yeah, and it is horrible to see that, you know, they just don't seem interested in. They want to follow a particular demographic, don't they? Ultimately, they just want to go down that route of supporting veterans that they see in their own image, not the true picture of veterans that have fought during the war. But on that note, if you do want to get your Royal British Legion Pride Poppy pin, you can do so by going on to the Royal British Legion Poppy Shop website. Just Google Royal British Legion Poppy Shop, or you can go on Amazon. They are £8 each, and all proceeds go to the Royal British Legion.
Well, that's all we have time for on today's show, and I hope you enjoyed it. I know we have. We're always looking to improve the pod, so if you've got any suggestions, just leave us a comment below or send us a message. We're on all the socials at the Gaily Digest. We're on Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram and Facebook. Yes, we are everywhere.
So until next time, stay safe and be happy.